Ladies and gentlemen, the show we've all been waiting for. Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present REP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts, Kim Purvis and Allison Robinson. Live every Thursday night on Spreaker, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Be sure to check out their Facebook page, REP Paranormal Busters.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Paranormal Friends, we're back. We were off last week, but we do have a special guest tonight. We have Tim Weisberg from Spooky South Coast Paranormal Talk Radio Show. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. I always get this every time I get on here. I start to get a scratch in my throat. Why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself, how you got started?
Sure. Well, I was a sports writer working for a newspaper here on the south coast of Massachusetts back in 2000. Well, actually, it was probably about 2002 that I got asked to do a sports show at the radio station where we do Spooky South Coast. And then after a few years of doing that, they told me, hey, you can do a show on anything you want if you want to do another show. And I pitched the idea of having a paranormal show. And the program director at first was kind of like, oh, yeah, ghosts and aliens and that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah. I said, well, when do you want to do it? I said, Saturday nights at 10 o'clock. And it's the only time I have on my schedule. And he said, oh, well, then, yeah, that's fine. Because generally that's radio graveyard time where they're just rerunning stuff.
So, right, yeah. Yep.
So they let us start doing that show in 2006, and we've been doing it ever since now, just about 600 episodes later.
Oh, wow. Holy smokes. Damn, that's a lot. We're at, what, 34?
Yeah, we're just at 34
We're just at 34. We're just newbies to this, so, you know.
Yeah, once you hit the 100 mark, they all blend together after that.
I'm pretty sure they probably do. I still have my moments. I still get a lot of brain farts and everything else and forget what I'm talking about, but, you know, it's all good. So what got you interested, though, in, like, the paranormal?
I think that I was always interested in it. My aunt and uncle owned a haunted house when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. But even as a little kid, I had like weird, strange experiences, things that I couldn't explain. And even from, at a young age, you expect your parents to tell you, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. Well, my mom would tell me about the ghosts that lived in her bedroom when she was a kid growing up. So I kind of was always aware of the idea of it. But I think being a pretty pragmatic person, I didn't know if I believed that it actually was real until I started actually investigating, which when I started doing Spooky South Coast, I had no intention of becoming a paranormal investigator. I figured I would just, sit there and armchair quarterback the paranormal. I'd sit in the studio and I would interview the people that were out there actually doing it. And about 3 months into the show, we brought Matt Moniz into the fold as one of our co-hosts, and he had been doing this stuff at that point for about 20 years, and he said, no, you're not going to sit here and talk about the paranormal unless you go out there and actually look for it yourself. How can you ask the right questions if you don't go out there and have these same experiences? So it was actually that is kind of the dividing line between when I went from being somebody that was interested in the paranormal to being somebody that was an actual paranormal researcher.
Very cool, very cool. Now, I know you've discussed, like, aliens, and have you done Bigfoot, too? I guess I hadn't seen that, but I know you have talked
Oh, yeah. I mean, we try to cover a little bit of everything. Sometimes we get in depth with stuff. Sometimes we kind of do like a cursory pass over of it. But generally, I think at this point in time, we've probably covered up almost every topic on the show.
Very nice, very nice. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on we did like a show on Bigfoot one time because my daughter, she is absolutely loves Bigfoot. What are your takes on Bigfoot?
I don't see. I would have to think that I kind of subscribe to Occam's razor in a lot of things, where the simplest explanation is usually the right one, and the simplest explanation for Bigfoot would be that it's a flesh and blood creature that we just haven't encountered yet. Mm-hmm. And, we just haven't physically laid eyes on and been able to capture and catalog. But at the same time, there's so many characteristics of it that plays into a lot of things that would be of a supernatural or metaphysical nature. So when Greg Newkirk says Bigfoot is a ghost, I don't think that he's, being 100% facetious with that. I think it's entirely possible that Bigfoot is some sort of otherworldly creature because of the way that he's able to kind of glimmer in and out of areas, and then how he's also seen and associated with areas of high strangeness. So I haven't made up my mind as to what it is. Right. I just know that there's enough evidence out there for me to at least keep considering the possibility that Bigfoot is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that we haven't dabbled in yet, but I would love to go do that, like go searching for Bigfoot.
Yeah,
I mean, me too. When you think about it, if we're out looking for ghosts, all we're doing is walking around yelling in the dark.
Right.
And if we go out looking for Bigfoot, all we are doing is going around yelling in the dark outside. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, you never know what you're gonna get.
It's like a ghost hunt, only with bug spray.
That is very true. That is true. Unless you go in the wintertime, then you freeze.
Yeah, and then you freeze. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I tend to, when it comes to the Bigfoot stuff, I'll only go out with seasoned investigators because I will be the guy that gets lost in the woods, and then you see all the news reports, and they say, well, after 4 days, we finally found him. He was emaciated and, covered in whatever, and then, sir, what was it that brought you out here? Oh, I was looking for Bigfoot.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that would be me, too. I'd totally get lost. I really would.
Depends on where I'm. If I'm in a place like close by where I know the area, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, if I had to go somewhere else, I didn't know the area.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to go by myself.
No, me either. Me either. All right, so I know that you've been associated with some other shows, like the first one that I think I recognize you from first was Ghost Stalkers. I think I'd actually talked to you one time. You were looking for locations, and I had told you about Farrar and Edinburgh and things like that. How was it working for that show?
I loved every minute of working on that show. I like to call Ghost Stalkers the greatest paranormal TV show that only lasted 6 episodes.
I loved that freaking show.
we that's the thing, is we were so ahead of our time, to toot our horns. We were so ahead of our time when it came to what it was that we were doing, because when Nick Groff asked me to work on the show and started talking to me about some of the concepts behind it, there was never a talk about and then we're going to go into here and we're going to investigate to prove that it's haunted, and we're going to go prove this place is haunted. We were taking the next evolutionary step in paranormal TV and saying, okay, we know these places are haunted already. There's enough people that have gone and investigated these places to tell us that there's something there. Now let's be the people that are trying to put all the pieces together and figure out the why. And that's what really drew me to working on that show, was that nobody had ever really addressed the why. Mm-hmm. And we were pretty out there with some of the experiments that we were doing and the things that we were trying, that, in 2014, people are watching this and being like, no, I just want people to go in there and tell me if there's a ghost or not. And now when you look at paranormal TV, a lot of it is exactly the same kind of stuff that we were doing. It's getting into those deeper questions. Mm-hmm. So I like to think we were just ahead of our time, and people just weren't ready for it yet.
No, I miss that show.
Oh my gosh!
I go find reruns of it.
I know. I absolutely. I did. It was one of my favorites because I liked the different perspectives. You had Chad, who was,
Screamer Chad.
Yeah. If a mouse farted, he'd scream. And then you had John in there in his suit and tie. It was just, and there are different ways of trying to connect and things. It was just it was really good. I was pissed that it didn't come back.
Yeah, me too. But it was purely, I mean, that's who they were. I mean, nothing was put on for television. You know, there was no, actually, you know, because Tenny is such a great mind that they, you know, the producers were telling him at times, I don't think he'll mind me telling the story now that we're years removed from it, but the producers were telling him at time like, oh no, John, you can't really tell people that on television. You have to really dumb it down. And, you know, and it was frustrating because like here they are trying to do this high concept stuff and they're trying to say, oh, no, we need to make this show just for the people who, you know, just want to see you jump and scream in the dark. So it was a real dichotomy of they're trying to make a show that the paranormal world will appreciate and understand, but at the same time, you know, and this is what the mistake people make all the time with paranormal TV shows, is they think that these shows are being made for us. And they're not being made for us. They're being made for the people that will never actually go out and look for this stuff on their own. Right. And so those are the people that they need to serve. And so it gets a little bit muddled that you're trying to do something bigger picture when most of the audience isn't ready to make the same assumptions and leaps in logic that you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's see here. Excuse me. Gosh dang it.
Well, you know, I'll tell you a funny story about Ghost Doctors too, because I think I can get away with this now. Is back in those days, it was very much on the forefront of all of these television shows, you know, suddenly finding demons everywhere. Oh, you know, this was before all that stuff had happened. So at this point in time, really the only thing that paranormal TV shows were looking for and accepting of were ghosts. And so there was an episode, it was the Springfield Hospital episode, and it's the one where they captured the shadowy mass figure in the basement, which is still some of the best footage I've ever seen. But in that episode, the original pitch that I had put together and the original background that I had written involved so much more than just the ghosts that were haunting this hospital and the tunnels underneath. It involved the UFO sightings that have been seen around there. And it involved a huge Bigfoot flap that had happened not once but twice in that immediate area. And so we're talking about like a John Keel window area, a place of high strangeness where all this stuff is connecting together. And when we're showing that to, and you know, the producers, Nick Groff, he's behind it. He's like, yeah, I love this. This is what we're looking for. Next level stuff. Yeah. And then we bring it to the network and the network says, no, cut all that stuff out and just focus on the ghosts. It's like, what? Here you have everything coming together into one. And, you know, this is before they had Bigfoot shows. Had the Bigfoot shows already been on TV by this point, then they would have been like, oh, crossover episode.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Gosh, that's a bummer.
No kidding.
Damn.
So we were just, like I said, we were just ahead of our time. I'm glad that, you know, the shows that are out there now are starting to expand their scope a little bit more. But I think the thing that's lost in it is that at the heart of that show, you had Chad's experience and John's experience, both of them, you know, Chad being a near-death experience, John actually having a death experience that shaped who they were as investigators. And they didn't let us go down that path enough. You know, the original concept of the show was that because they had those experiences, they were able to investigate the paranormal in a different way than other people. And they just kind of brushed that part aside. And I'm like, but that's what makes them different. And that's we need to explore that connection. But hey, you know,
definitely.
Still 6 entertaining episodes that people still talk about today. So pretty proud of that.
I know. Yeah, I know. Every time I see it, if I see them come on, I'm just like, oh my gosh, yeah. That's one that my daughter would actually watch too, because otherwise she gets scared shitless. But she loved that one. So.
Well, I think, you know, paranormal people, you know, people in the paranormal world were turned off by Chad because they said, oh, you shouldn't be screaming and you shouldn't be scared on an investigation. But says who? Right. Why not? He was giving us his natural reaction. Right. And, you know, the fact that you had – see, that's the thing is like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I was so scared because, you know, Chad would be screaming. I'm like, no. See, that didn't get me going. The episodes when John Tenney, who's been doing this his whole life, when he starts to get scared or freaked out, that's the episodes where I said, okay, I don't feel right. I watched that episode in Holmesburg Prison where, I saw it live on television just like everybody else. And as I watched that, I was generally concerned for his well-being, knowing full well that he was perfectly fine, that he had filmed that months before. But it's just, you're on that journey with him and you make that connection. And I don't think people make that same connection with a lot of the other investigators they see on TV.
No. I don't think so. Honestly.
Well, Allison's a good one for, like, Chad, because she's a screamer.
Oh, gosh, dang. I had my first scare. We were at Malvern Manor, and, I was live, and I was describing something to somebody, and all of a sudden, the doll on the dresser just flew off. Like, legs first, flew off the dresser. I totally about shit myself. I screamed.
She screamed.
It was like an award-winning scream. I should.
That's a scream-worthy moment. If you're going to scream, that's the time that you scream. When dolls are flying around, that's when you scream.
It literally broke the doll. We had to glue her back together the next morning.
But that was your natural reaction, and when you screamed, you put out extra energy into the environment, and that extra energy could be used to help something manifest. So there's really nothing wrong with showing that fear. The funny thing is, when it comes to fear, and this is where I think it's lost on a lot of paranormal investigators because they take that approach of you shouldn't be afraid. First of all, if you do this enough, it takes a lot for you to get to the point where you're afraid. Right. So if you get to that point, that means that there's a lot going on. So it's okay to be afraid in that time. And then also that fear heightens all of your senses. So when every other investigation you go on is calm and not as threatening and you don't feel scared, then it becomes kind of mundane and you can maybe mail it in a little bit. Whereas if you're afraid, you're on heightened alert for everything. So now your senses are going to be more attuned to your surroundings and what's going on. As long as you can keep that balance of not letting the fear get the best of you and then have your mind playing tricks on you, then having that fear as part of your demeanor during the investigation can only help kind of enhance what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the weird thing is okay, after we screamed and this doll went flying, we continued to investigate.
We just kept on investigating after the scream, but...
yeah. Then kind of later towards the night, we're like, let's dial it down. But yeah, that was my very first moment, because I think that's the first time I've ever had anything actually happen like that, so I could relate to him in some points, but I've never had anything really happen to me to make me scream until that time.
Yeah, I think, again, we have a responsibility, I think, if you're going to go into somebody's house and take on a residential case, which is part of the reason why I don't take on residential cases, because I don't want any part of this. But when you go into somebody's home and they're asking you for help, you do have a responsibility to be a calming influence on them and to not freak them out more than they're already freaked out. Yep. So in that regard, you do want to kind of hold in your fear. But if it's just you and your team and you're feeling apprehensive, ride it out. Don't shut it down because you feel like it's not professional. It's not professional anyway. You're not getting paid to go out there and do this.
No. Just for fun, basically. All right, so let's see here. You've done some other shows too. Was it Ghost Asylum? You did some of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they brought me in after Ghost Stalkers had wrapped up. They were looking for somebody to research some locations, so they brought me in season 2 of Ghost Asylum, and I worked on I think 2 or 3 seasons after that. I forget how many they had, but basically what it would be is my job would be to go out and try to find different locations that they could investigate, then find out the backstory behind them, and really do a deep dive into the history. So to find newspaper articles, to find any kind of journal accounts, anything that would kind of give us a first-hand perspective of the history of it, and then to go out and also find people that had paranormal experiences there, interview them, and kind of get a sense of what it was that they had gone through and what they had experienced, so that when the TWC went to these locations, they would have a rough idea of what kind of experiments they could run to see if they could get kind of similar results. So the one thing that I will say, and everybody always asks me about this, I had nothing to do with the traps. ghost traps that they would build on that show. I had nothing to do with that.
Oh yeah.
I was not a fan of it when I saw it on season 1. When it came to season 2, and them asking me to work on it, I said, "Oh, as long as you don't want me to work on the traps." They said, "No. The guys handle those themselves." So
some of those were pretty damn interesting.
The concepts behind them were solid. I just don't think they'd be able to actually trap anything.
No, and they had the Faraday cage too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's where they would put everything. Is that where they put everything inside there? Like after they would try to like get something, they put it in there and then try to communicate, right?
Yeah, they had like their own kind of little like ecto containment unit.
Yeah,
and that was kind of the basis and the genesis of this idea of trapping them, was that it would be, you would bring them back to that spot, and then you would try to communicate after that. So just, people always say, well, none of those traps worked. No, I mean, we don't know that they didn't work. What we know is that when they tried to communicate with something that was supposedly, in the containment unit, they didn't get any results. It doesn't mean that something wasn't there and just not responding to them.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is very true.
But I also think, paranormal energy is not going to be physically trapped by anything that we do. Mm-hmm. I think that it has the ability to kind of go where it wants, when it wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't even buy into this whole, spirits being trapped at a certain location idea. I think that if they're trapped, it's not a physical trapping that causes them to be stuck there. It's more just the kind of the ghost's own psyche that's keeping it trapped there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you do all this researching, how much time do you have to put into that to research all these areas and then hunt down these people and be like, hey, what do you know about this place?
See, yeah, it's hard because I can't really tell you exactly how many maybe hours I put into it, because what I was doing was I was working a full-time job, and then I had another part-time job that was, almost a full-time job with the hours I put into that. And I was doing this stuff in kind of bits and pieces around all of that. So there might be a day when I say, okay, today I'm going to do 4 hours of research, and then another day I might only have time for a 20-minute phone call. Uh-huh. But it is pretty intensive to try to go through and find all of these spots. And I kind of reverse engineered it a little bit, because what a lot of paranormal TV shows do is they go out and they look for the good stories. They want to go to a place that nobody's ever been before. Mm-hmm. That's always kind of the producers always love it if you can go to a place that's never been on TV. Right. But yet they want a place that has a paranormal history. So they don't want a place where we're going to be the first people to ever investigate this place. They actually don't like that. So
wow.
I have to find locations that nobody's seen on television, but that have paranormal activity. So the hard part is not, does a place have paranormal activity, but will they let us come and film there? Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part. So what I started doing is I started going to, they would give me an idea of what region they wanted to film in because of the travel schedule that they had put in, because they don't just send them all over the country. We're going to go to Florida this week and Texas next week and Oklahoma the next week. They want them to go into regions so that they can save on the travel expenses. And so they would say, okay, we want something in the southeast of the United States. So I would go on these websites. Every state has their own film commission website. Oh. And on the film commission website, they have a list of locations where people will say, hey, I have this place that you can go and film at if you want to put me in a movie or a television show. So I would go in there and I'd look up places that were abandoned. Uh-huh. And then from there, I would contact the people that were in charge of them. And then I would say, well, is there any paranormal stories associated with this? And then they'd say, yeah, we've had this team in and this team in. And so that kind of gave me an idea already that I was dealing with somebody that would say, okay, we'll let you in, as opposed to Ghost Stalkers, where, I would find these awesome places that would just be the holy grail of investigating. Uh-huh. And then they would say, oh, yeah, but we're not going to let you come in and do that. Or you can come in and investigate, but you can't put it on television, because then everybody and his brother is going to be in here trying to get in here and doing this. Yeah. A perfect example is the Holmesburg prison. Uh-huh. When we filmed that episode of Ghost Stalkers, nobody had ever filmed there. People had done investigations, but nobody had ever been there to film. And it's literally the sister prison to Eastern State Penitentiary.
Oh, wow.
And almost every paranormal investigator that, travels around has gone to Eastern State. Mm-hmm. But have you ever heard the term when they're talking about, in prison, they're like, oh, we're going to send them up the river.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where that came from, because at Eastern State, if you were, particularly bad, they would send you up the river to Holmesburg. So we wanted to, kind of explore the other side of that. And so Holmesburg let us in. It was not really that hard for me to get them to agree to film. And I got the former warden to come on screen and share the story. Now, this is a place where there was a riot and prison guards were killed by the prisoners. And here's this warden who was there that day and watched his friends die, and he's coming back there and sharing that story. It was a very powerful episode in terms of all of that backstory. But then I think they let one other paranormal show go there and film. I can't remember which one it was. And then after that, they said, nope, no more. No more paranormal shows, because they just didn't like the way that it was being portrayed on television and the way that, the accommodations they had to make when people were there filming. So it just goes to show, not every place that has paranormal activity wants the attention. And sometimes when they do it, they agree to do it because, we're waiving a $2,000 location fee in their face to come and film for 3 days. So they'll do it to get that quick money. But then, they have second thoughts about it afterwards, and they don't want to have anybody. I mean, I'll tell you a story where I had hooked up a location. I'm going to take a sip of water.
That's okay.
On the first season of Haunted Towns, the owner of, at the time, see now, the Lizzie Borden house. Most people know the Lizzie Borden story. And the house that she lived in after the trial, Maplecroft. That's kind of across town, and now Kindred Spirits has been there. There's been some other shows that have gone there and filmed, but at the time they were able to go there now because the same people that own the house where the murders took place now own that house. So there's an easy connection with somebody who knows kind of how this stuff works. But when we were doing the Fall River episode, Maplecroft was still owned by a woman from Texas that had bought it because she was obsessed with the idea of turning it into a bed and breakfast and kind of, being part of the Lizzie Borden story. So I had developed a relationship with her over the years where we were going to be the first people to ever be allowed in there to investigate at all, like even without television cameras.
Oh, wow.
And we planned it all out, and we told her how much we were going to give her for a location fee. And the crew comes into Fall River from wherever they had been filming before, I think Gettysburg or something. They all show up, and the field producers are ready to go over there and start kind of scouting the location for how to set up. And she doesn't show up. And then they're like, this is kind of weird. Like, we can see her sitting down the street in her car, like watching us, waiting for us to leave. And so I'm like blowing up her phone, like, what's going on here? And she backed out. She backed out of allowing us to film there, the day that we arrived in town. So now we're scrambling to find another location. And it just goes to show that, not just because they say okay, they don't have second thoughts. I think it probably happens more often than not that people are maybe sorry that they let people come in and film a paranormal show at their location. Some of them capitalize on it. Some of them are smart enough to say, okay, now I can turn this into a money-making venture that we can use to help restore the property. But then other places are like, oh, no, we had no idea, like Norma Sutcliffe, the woman that owned the Conjuring house prior to Corey and Jen just buying it last summer, she was on Ghost Hunters. And then the movie comes out, and she's like, I had no idea it was going to be like this, that there was going to be people on my front lawn. I'm like, well, of course you did. Yeah. You had to have known that.
Oh, yeah.
And so don't try to act surprised now, just try and deal with the situation as best you can. I think it's very disingenuous when people, especially when they agree to go on TV and have it happen, and then they're like, oh, well, I wasn't counting on all this attention afterwards.
Well, you're going to get it if you're on TV. I mean, if you've got that, people are going to show up. They're going to be curious. They're going to want to know. So, yeah, you're going to get attention.
I pitch to historical societies and to heritage museums all the time that, listen, if we come into your place and we can kind of walk away saying, hey, I think there's really some decent activity here, that opens up a whole new revenue source for you. That changes the game for you, because now instead of just doing day tours on the weekends for 2 hours, you can start having people rent it out for overnights for $1,500.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. I mean, where I live in my town, there's a tavern that was built in 1690. It's a beautiful house. That's 300 and something years old, and they do day tours in the summer for a couple of months that they charge like $3 a person, and they're lucky if they do a dozen or 2 dozen tours all summer. So they got no money coming in. We start coming in and doing paranormal events there because the place turns out to be haunted as hell.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they've got this whole new revenue stream that becomes one of their biggest money makers every year. It's just us coming there for one night, doing one event there for them, and then they can start making repairs to this place that they never dreamed they'd be able to make.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like, we had the Granger house.
Yeah.
In Granger, it's in Marion. It's in Marion, Iowa. Yeah. That place is kind of new, too. And that place is actually, the history of it's pretty good. And we've been there a couple times, but that's something like that. It's a more of a museum type thing, but I think there's...
Well, you've probably seen the Oliver House on TV. If you watched Paranormal Lockdown, there was an episode there. And I know that Haunt Me has done an episode there. There's been some different shows that have filmed there. Mm-hmm. That's a place where paranormal investigators are actually the ones running. Christy Parrish, a friend of mine, is the one that's kind of in charge of everything that goes there. And a lot of her volunteers are all paranormal investigators. And from all the different nights that they do there, they'll do a pro night where it's people that are seasoned investigators. They'll do a novice night where it's people's first time ever investigating. All these different paranormal things that they do, private rentals, whatever. They've been able to raise enough money that they put a new roof on the place. They put indoor plumbing into the house for the first time in decades. And they were able to make solid repairs that not only benefit future ghost hunts there, but also benefit everything else they do there. Like now they have weddings there all the time, and people rent it out for private functions when you couldn't do that when you're having to, go in a porta potty in the middle of the night.
Yeah. That would not be fun to do that, especially if it was like wintertime. If you had to go out to use a porta potty, holy shit.
That's just like using an outhouse.
Yeah, well...
Well, we did an event. There's a place called the S.K. Pierce Mansion, and it's been on Ghost Hunters, been on Ghost Adventures, been on a haunting. It's one of the most insanely haunted places that I've ever investigated. The stuff that happens there is incredible. But when we did our first investigation there, they didn't have any indoor plumbing. So in order to, by the town's laws, in order for us to have an event there, we had to provide bathroom services. So we actually had to rent an outhouse and have them deliver it and put it on the front lawn of this place. And people were, holding it in rather than going outside because that night it happened to be like 18 degrees out.
Oh, gosh.
I'd use the outhouse. I couldn't hold it.
Oh, no, they're standing around, dancing around doing the pee-pee dance. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I have to go. Like, that's what we rented a porta potty for. It's too cold outside. Yeah, but I'm paying $150 for the porta potty. Go use it.
Oh, my gosh.
If you pay $150 to rent a porta potty and they don't have to clean it out afterwards, there's just money down the drain, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Or actually not literally, because it didn't go down the drain.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Let's see here. We did have a question. It's kind of a funny one from Matt in chat. He's like, what's a good cure for the plague?
Dying. Once you die, you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your answer, Matt. Sometimes we get random stuff in there, so.
The one thing about the TV shows going in is good for the place, but then it could be bad for the place too. Because Edinburgh, when Ghost Adventurers went to Edinburgh, now everybody thinks Zach touched this and touched this. Stuff's coming up missing now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we experienced it here in Massachusetts, in Salem, where he went to Salem and he did an investigation there. And from what I understand, they told him not to sit on this chair. They said, don't sit on this chair. It's a 400-year-old chair. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the ghost possessed him during the course of the investigation, and the ghost forced him to sit in the chair, and then he broke a 400-year-old chair.
Oh,
so
geez.
Now the people that are in charge, the Peabody Essex Museum that's in charge of all these locations, are all like, nope, we don't allow investigation here anymore. Nope, you're not allowed here anymore. So it's a tough thing to have to be, the next people after something goes wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've noticed that at Farrar's had people try to break in. Mm-hmm. Because now that they've learned it's haunted, everybody's trying to get in there.
Yeah.
And then Edinburgh's got stuff coming up missing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They've had people damage the walls at Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah.
But
I mean, one of the biggest paranormal problems is cemeteries.
Yeah.
teams that want to go out and legitimately investigate at cemeteries, and then there's the punk kids that go out there and just go out there and drink and cause a ruckus and do damage. But then what happens? So, okay, the three of us, we go out and we investigate at a cemetery. We're going to be very reverential. We're going to take care of everything that's going on. We're going to make sure that we don't leave any sign that we were there. We're going to keep everything neat and clean. Yep. And it's all about respect. But then these punk kids come in and they damage everything. The police show up, and what's the first thing those kids say out of their mouth? Oh, we were ghost hunting. Yeah. So then the idea becomes that, all these paranormal investigators are just coming into these cemeteries and causing damage. So it's, the fact that so many people are doing this now it's good. Believe me, I love the fact that the paranormal world is expanding and bringing in more people, but at the same time, it also it hurts. It hurts it as well, because now because we don't have any kind of regulatory body for what it is that we're doing, that any idiot can go out there and call themselves a paranormal investigator and give the rest of us a bad name.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that does happen quite a bit. A lot of people think it's.
Shoot, when we go into a place, before we leave, we sweep the floors before we go.
Yeah. Even if it wasn't us that made the mess, we still pick it up.
We pick up after everybody, even if it wasn't us.
In that case, you can come investigate my house every Saturday afternoon. Bring a mop, too, because... But that's the thing, is like... The problem is we, and I'm sure you guys know it, and I'm sure everybody listening knows this. If you're a paranormal investigator, you know that there's a nearby group or a nearby investigator, or there's somebody who is just an idiot, somebody who's not doing it the right way, somebody who, and usually they're the first ones to cry. How come I don't get a chance to be on television like everybody else does? You can kind of tell what their motivations are,
right?
But it's those people that, if they're the loudest and if they're the ones that are getting the most attention, they're the ones that people think the paranormal world is about. And it's changed a lot now in the last 14 years since we started doing Spooky South Coast. But when we first started, like, we had to explain to people, like, listen, there's something here that people don't talk about. There's an undercurrent of something in the paranormal world that people just don't like to address, and that's the fact that most of us, we were not the cool kids. In high school, we were not the Mr. and Mrs. Popular. We were the ones that were kind of the weirdos and the freaks. And now what we've done is we found a group of other freaks that we can all hang out with, because we're all interested in the same weird subject. But the problem is we don't have the social skills to have this group dynamic now. That you've got people that are calling themselves, I'm the lead investigator and I'm the head of the group and I'm all this and that, but they don't have any idea of how to interact and how to manage people. And so, it turns into a clash of egos. That hurts the paranormal more than some of the stuff that we do at the actual locations. Just having this infighting and having these egos that get involved.
Oh yeah, and you see a lot of that too. You really do.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you would think, since it's so hard to find people that are into the same weird stuff that we are, you think that we would, have a little bit more of a tolerance for some of their other quirks. But we don't, everything turns into a battle. Like, my favorite is, and I won't get too in depth, but there's a location that we investigate, that we do events at, and they have a house paranormal team, a paranormal team that is the official investigative team of this location. Now, first of all, I hate that. I hate when somebody is the official anything of anything.
Right.
But what happens is now, every time that we do our investigations, they're inserting themselves into it. And their whole group is nothing but, a circle jerk, where they're all just trying to make each other feel better. And it's like, I'm here to stroke your ego, you're here to stroke my ego, and we're all here to stroke the leader's ego. And it bleeds into our investigation and gets in the way of what it is we're trying to do. So we have a group of people, 50, 60 people that are investigating this place for the first time, so excited. This woman who comes to all of our events pulls out this brand new piece of equipment that she just got. She couldn't wait to try it. And the guy from the team looks at it and says, oh, yeah, our team tested those out already. Yeah, those are junk.
Oh, wow.
It's like, dude, maybe they are junk, but it's up to her to find that out for herself. It's not up to you to give her a lecture and tell her basically, hey, you just wasted $200 buying that. You know, like, come on. If she wanted a review, she would have gone to Amazon and read the reviews.
Exactly. Gosh. Yeah, that stuff irritates me. Just let people figure it out on their own. I mean, you don't have to sit there and tell them.
We're always experimenting with new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and we pick up a lot of things from other people too. We like to learn from others as well. So
Oh, and I love that. I love the fact that you're willing to work with other people when so many other groups won't. So many other groups will say, or investigators will say, oh, no, I have my team because I have my way of doing things. Nope. Well, yeah, but your way of doing things isn't the only way.
Right.
When we have these, these group events, I always will get seasoned investigators that will say, I don't like to go to these things because what you get is a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing or first timers that are trying to figure it out as they go along. Mm-hmm. And then it gets in the way of my investigation. But what actually happens is when you show up there and you take part in this, what you're actually seeing is, oh, I remember what it was like to be like that, and I remember what it was like to see this for the first time, and then you actually get a newfound sense of wonder about what it is that you're doing, and maybe you pick up some ideas from somebody that you wouldn't have done before. I never would have used, the SLS system if I hadn't seen somebody else use it, because I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a piece of equipment, but when I see somebody else use it, I see the value in that. Or, one of the things that I've done for years, I've gone away from ghost boxes and spirit boxes and all that stuff, and I use the EchoVox app. And other people have seen me use the EchoVox app, and then they picked up on it because of it. And then, but then I saw somebody else do the Estes method. Somebody else taught me that, and so now I incorporate that into my investigation. This is how you learn is, nobody, there's no other science, if we want to call it that, because it's not really a science, but there's no other science out there where people don't peer review and conduct experiments and based on the work of others and try to incorporate some of that into their own research. To say, well, that's not how we do things is just an idiotic statement to make. And if that's the way that you feel, get the hell out of the paranormal.
Exactly. Amen. We've been doing this for almost 6 years now, but we still go to other people's events, even though it's going to be a big group, we might not get a lot,
But how else are you going to learn from other people or help other people learn from you if they're new, and give them a little bit of tips here and there, if, and
yeah, or just meet new people.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
If you have a team of 5 or 6 people, and you're the same people going out on investigations all the time, then you're not really meeting other people that are interested in this. And then when you do, say you have an opening on your group and you're auditioning people, now it becomes in this certain format that you're not really seeing who they are. So it's a great way. Like I've found that there's people who come to our events as ticket buyers. And so when they're ticket buyers, essentially they're a customer. I don't really look at it like that. I look at it as they're all just regular fellow investigators that just help contribute to us being able to pay this place for the night.
Right.
But there's people who have come to these events as customers that have met other customers, and then paranormal groups have formed out of that. And sometimes relationships have even formed out of that. And then sometimes we, see that group go on to greater success than others might have seen. And it's like it's almost like you're kind of you're planting the seed for the paranormal community in the area to grow.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Definitely. And we've been trying different stuff. Like we took a scream pad from Halloween, where you step on it and it screams. We're trying that out to see if, when you hear footsteps and stuff, we're laying it out in the hallways, and maybe one of these times it'll go off. We don't know.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is so most people make the mistake of thinking that they have to build their paranormal equipment, box or bag or whatever. They have to build it out of all the stuff that they've seen on TV. So, you can go on Amazon, you can buy a ghost hunting kit where they recommend, all the top equipment to buy, and you can drop $1,000 or whatever. And you'll be equipped with everything that you need to start investigating. But to me, the best stuff and the best equipment that I found has been from going to, Goodwill or the Salvation Army or a yard sale or flea market and looking at something and saying, I think I can adapt that. for what it is that we're doing. You know, when everybody else is going out and buying these $10,000 DVR systems in the mid 2000s to set up for their investigations, I was going to the Salvation Army and buying used baby monitors.
Oh yeah,
you know, we've got those too.
Yeah, we've got some of those. Yeah,
it's experimentation. That's what it's all about. And why, if you're experimenting, why spend all that money on something when you know something for a fifth of the price could do the same job?
Yeah. Yep. And everybody does that flashlight thing. We went to the Dollar Tree and got battery-operated candles. They work just as great as the flashlights do. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the my favorite thing is that everybody goes and buys the laser grids. Now, granted, laser grids have dropped in price because they're being made in China, so now you can pick one up for about $5.
Yep.
But so you buy the laser grid, and then if you want to buy the stand that you put the laser grid on that holds the button down for you and holds it in well, those are like $60. But what you can do is you can take a woman's hair elastic, roll that over the button so it stays on, and then take a chip clip from a bag of chips and use that as the stand to hold the thing up. So now you've got a dollar store fix for something that, you know. And then even better than that is, well, why use one of those if you have the electricity in the place that you're investigating? Because then you can go out and get the lazy lights that people put in their front yard for Christmas where
yeah, that's right.
it blasts the lights on there. And that's essentially just a plug-in laser grid. So that's what I use now. If there's electricity, I just bring that in. And now I have one that I don't have to worry about the spirits drawing all the battery energy out of and killing the battery on me.
That is true. And that's something that
I brought it up to you one time.
Yeah.
That I wanted to get and hadn't gotten one yet.
Yeah.
So don't buy them now when they're out on the shelf.
No, buy them later when that's out of season.
Well, I was going to use it for outside at Christmas and then use it for goose hunting too.
That's a good idea too. But I always go and I pick mine up, in January when they're putting all the holiday stuff on clearance, and then I grab it up and I'll get it for like $8-10 instead of spending $30 or $40.
Oh yeah, my cousin, he actually made a camcorder. He got a camcorder and he did his own IR light and everything, and it works pretty damn good. He got the stuff at Goodwill. So well,
that's one of the things that people were paying a lot of money for were the full spectrum cameras.
Yeah.
You know, they're dropping $300 or $400 on a full spectrum camera, and what's funny is you're spending that money on the camera, and what do they tell you about it? It's like 8 megapixels in a 16 megapixel world. So it's already not a great quality camera. Well, that's because they're just doing the same modification to it that you can. Go to a flea market, go to a pawn shop, go to somewhere where you can pick up a bunch of digital cameras for $3 or $4 each.
Right.
And then what you do is you just open up the back of it, and what focuses in the light is there's a little piece of glass behind the lens. And so what you do is you take that little piece of glass out and it turns it into a full spectrum camera. Now you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up the first couple times because it's so sensitive.
No matter what.
And you'll break it. You'll break something else inside of it. But that's why you buy 3 or 4 of them for $1 or $2 each, so you can experiment with them and get that steady hand. And so in the end, you finally have yourself an IR camera that you spent $8 for instead of spending $400.
That's an idea.
One of the other things that people were all about years ago was the real-time EVP recorders.
Oh, yep.
You know, those were like $400. And I found an app, an Android app that was free called the Idiotizer. And what it did is it took audio in from the microphone and it played it back over the speakers so that the idea is that you were supposed to like talk into it and hear yourself talking back, and it was supposed to be like a tongue twister that would mess you all up and make you look like an idiot. So it was called the Idiotizer.
Yeah.
So I said, well, wait a minute. This is essentially a real-time EVP app for free. And so I reached out to some of my friends that were using real-time EVP, and I said, I think I found a free option for that. And they all came back to me and they said, the only way that it works as real-time EVP is if what you're hearing isn't a direct playback from the microphone, but rather something that's going to the memory card and then being played back. If it's being recorded and then what's playing back is actually the recording, that's real-time EVP because you're giving the spirit a chance to imprint itself on the recording. Otherwise, if it's just the microphone, it's just room noise and there's no way to verify it. So I reached out to the creator of the app and I said, listen, weird question, but when you play back the audio, where is it coming from? Is it coming directly from the microphone or is it coming from the memory card? And they said that the way that it's designed is that What comes into the microphone is recorded, and then what's recorded is immediately played back in a loop. So it's like, that's a real-time EVP recorder. $400 worth of technology that you can download for free.
Wow, that's awesome.
Definitely.
I need to get more handy, though. I'd like to be able to, try to make my own stuff, but...
The people who work...
I know, but I need the patience to do it.
The team at the Oliver House is amazing. Between Christy and Paul, one of her volunteers there, the two of them are like, they will create all these crazy ideas and experiments, and usually Christy's the one that thinks stuff up, and then Paul's the one that can kind of help put it into motion, and they just build some amazing things. And the fact that they have a place that they can go and investigate in regularly, that really gives them a chance to field test the ideas that they come up with before they introduce them to other people. But that's going to be the real future of the paranormal. It's not in creating store-bought stuff that will help investigate. If that was the case, people would have already jumped all over that and created stuff, and we'd already see a ghost hunting section at Home Depot. But instead, it's going to be stuff that people are making up on their own, and then other people are adapting them. I mean, that's what Frank's box started off as one guy making these boxes, and then everybody else started adapting them and coming up with different ideas. And now we have all these other versions of it that were all just based on a hack some guy created in his workshop back in Colorado because he thought aliens were talking to him through it.
Wow. Yeah. You never know. You really never know.
You just never know what's going to work.
Excuse me.
Try it all. That's what I'd say.
Yep. That's all you can do. I mean, what's it going to hurt to try anything? I mean, it really doesn't.
Especially if you're buying the stuff at, Goodwill or flea markets or something, you're only spending a couple of bucks. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
That's right. That's the way I look at it. I don't know. Maybe we should try that sometime. Just try.
Well, we've taken my fire truck. It's just got a button they can push to make sounds. Mm-hmm. We haven't got that to work yet, but one of these days it possibly could.
One of these days it might. You never know.
Well, my favorite is every paranormal team went out and bought a drone. And I had to say to them all, like, well, do you know how to fly a drone? No. Well, then why would you go out and spend, $4,000 on something that you don't know how to fly? Like, go out and buy the kid's toy version of a drone and try that and see if that works.
Right.
You don't know once you get into these places if there's even anywhere you can fly them around.
Right. Exactly. Some of these places are actually pretty damn small. So, I mean, some of the places we've been in, like, there's not a lot of room for...
I don't want a drone.
No, I don't want a drone either.
No, I worked in the news department at my radio station for about a year and a half, and the news director at the time was obsessed with the idea of getting a drone because he's like, oh, if we get that, then we can have access to, like, when the police tape is up, we'll be able to, like, fly over it. It's like having our own news helicopter. We'll be able to get all kinds of footage. Yeah. And I said, that's great, but if I'm not taking it with me if I go to cover something because I'm not confident being able to fly it, and I'm not going to be the guy to break it.
Right. Oh, yeah, no kidding. I mean,
when we were filming, I guess I can tell the story. When we were filming Haunted Towns the first season, they were filming in Salem, Massachusetts, and they had just gotten a brand new drone to do aerial shots. Mm-hmm. And the production assistant that was flying the drone, they're flying it near this pond, and he crashed it into a tree, and the drone fell into the pond, and he ruined it. And they'd only had it for like maybe 6 hours at that point.
Gosh.
So he totally destroyed a couple $1,000s worth drone in the first like 6 hours that they had it.
Oh my gosh, that'd probably be me. I'd open the package and start it, and I would break it. I just know it, so I don't even want to mess with anything like that.
I thought about a remote control car, or with the GoPro that we got, and tape onto it to like go into smaller areas where we can't go.
Oh
but
yeah.
Other than that, that's all I've ever thought about.
Yeah.
Yep, we've done that. Another good thing to use is any of those telescoping, like like mechanics will have these telescoping magnets that they use. Like if they drop a screw down inside an engine block, you can use those. You see them all the time at the dollar store. They call them gator grabbers. They're like the long stick with the pinchers on the end of them. Mm-hmm. Those are good. Anything like that you can use and adapt is always good. I mean, I had for the longest time all of my, and even to this day, like, everybody wants to go out and buy like noise canceling headphones because, those are the best way to kind of listen to EVPs, but they're $300-$400 for a pair of headphones.
Yeah.
I just go to the pawn shops and for the longest time I had a pair of Bose, and I'm wearing them right now. People say, you went out and spent money on Bose? No, I went to a pawn shop and I bought a pair of Bose for $25. And then the cups on the ear cups were all shredded. And so I reached out to Bose and said, hey, can I get new ear cups? And they said, yeah, we'll sell them to you for $40. But if you want to send us the old headphones, we have an upgrade program. And so send us the old headphones and like another $50, and we'll send you a brand new pair of, the latest noise canceling headphones we have.
Dang.
So for $75, they even paid the shipping. For $75, I got a pair of brand new noise canceling headphones from Bose.
Wow.
You just got to be savvy with what you're doing.
Man.
We got to remember these ideas.
I know, no kidding.
Well, Bose did eliminate the program. Apparently, I must have told too many people about it.
But still, you could go to the pawn shop and find a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to get brand new.
No.
Mm-hmm. No, people are going out and buying guitar pedals, and they're buying amplifiers because they're building these, essentially trying to build those stupid Steve Huff Wonder Boxes. Don't even get me started on Steve Huff. That's a whole different thing.
I saw something about that. Yeah, I saw.
But they're trying to build those boxes and those same ideas, but they're going out and they're spending top dollar getting those pieces of equipment from musicians' websites. Don't go to where they're selling stuff brand new to musicians that want them. Go to the places where people who thought they were musicians and aren't anymore are trying to get rid of their stuff. Go to Facebook Marketplace. Go to Craigslist. Yeah. Buy those things for $20-$30 instead of $200 or $300.
Exactly. That's where we've gotten, all my daughter's guitars have pretty much come from the pawn shop.
Mm-hmm. So. I have three guitars, a bass, a keyboard. I have all kinds of. Now I don't know how to play any of them, and I took lessons, and I still don't know how to play. But I have all these musical instruments that I got from yard sales and flea markets and pawn shops.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I walked into an antique store one time, and I'd always wanted an accordion. Yeah. And I said, hey, how much for this? It wasn't an accordion with a keyboard. It was, I was like, it's just push buttons. And the guy's like, yeah, it's called a melodeon. And I was like, how much do you want for it? He goes, well, nobody really wants it because it's not a real accordion. So I don't know, $25. Oh, so I bought it. I took it home. It was from Hohner. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to reach out to Hohner and see if I can get the little leather finger straps to be replaced. And so I reached out to Hohner and said, can you send me a new set of finger straps? And the guy from Hohner actually said, no, actually, what you just bought is the last steel reed melodeon we made before World War II. Because in World War II, we couldn't use steel anymore, so we adapted the design and never used steel again. So you actually have the last steel reed melodeon line that we made. We don't even have any of the specs on it. So if you could send that to us, we would like to diagram it and create all the specs, and we'll just clean it all up for you at no cost. So it's like just the dumbest little things like that. You never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. I would have never even thought of that. Yeah, that's pretty damn cool, though, actually.
And my favorite thing that people have started using on paranormal investigations, and I want to say it was Christy at the Oliver House that came up with the idea, or her people at the Oliver House that came up with it. But I know it kind of originated there. But they have these LED light up cat balls.
Oh,
that you can buy in any store, Walmart. Anybody has these light up LED cat balls.
Yep.
You get them for $3 or $4.
Right.
And you get more interaction out of those on an investigation than anything else.
Yeah.
You just leave them on the floor, and you know that if somebody wants to come over there and touch them, you'll know it because they'll light up.
Yeah. If you go to the paranormal sites, you can buy them for one per ball is $12 or something, and you can go to Tyson's or somewhere and get 2 balls for $3.
Yeah,
right.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Listen, a lot of my friends run those paranormal stores, and certainly I recommend going there for some of the higher end stuff.
Right.
But also, like, it's easier to get stuff cheaper. Like the ghost meter EMF detector, the one that's like kind of like shaped kind of like an 8 or like a snowman, and it has the red top. I'm sure you've seen a lot of investigators use those. So they were selling those years ago on websites for $60 If you went to the Home Depot website, you couldn't buy them in a Home Depot store. They didn't stock them, but they sold them on the Home Depot website for like $15.99.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, because they weren't selling them as a ghost hunting tool, they were selling them as an electromagnetic field detector for people that were electricians.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, when you're not putting that premium on it for people that are looking for it for ghost hunting, you can really save a lot of money.
Yep. Let's see. We have a question here. How do you feel about working with psychic mediums?
Well, at first, if you would ask me, I would have said I don't work with psychic mediums. Just because I never had. But when I met Stephanie Burke, who is the co-host of Spooky South Coast now and one of my best friends, she changed my mind and really opened my mind to working with mediums. Before, I don't think that I ever believed in them, but she is 100% the real deal. And I have found that bringing her on investigations makes a huge difference. You know, she always gets mad when I call her this, but she is just another tool in the toolbox to be able to utilize on an investigation. But it brings a whole new – it's almost like a cheat code for an investigation because they can come in there and they can communicate and tell you, like, the direction that you need to go in. So instead of going in there blind and trying to find things that you can prove, she's able to tell you, if you go and do this, you're going to get results. If you go and do this, you're going to get results. And so it kind of helps you cut a lot of the basically a paranormal expedition is like going fishing. You're going to go out there in the boat and you're going to sit there all day and maybe you'll catch something, but maybe not. And you could waste a good 8 or 10 hours sitting out there hoping to get a bite and come back with nothing.
Right.
But when you bring on a psychic medium that's a real legitimate psychic medium, it's like fishing with dynamite. Now you're just dropping it in the water and they're all jumping into the boat. So it's a beneficial thing to have, but also it's opened my mind up to a lot of alternate theories about what it is that we're investigating. You know, like because of the way that she can communicate, I have stopped thinking that a ghost is necessarily going to obey the laws of physics and it's going to be something I can detect and prove. So it's kind of changed the mindset that I have on a lot of things. And I think that I always used to say I'm as psychic as a brick, but now I have to say I'm as psychic as a sponge because I find that I do kind of absorb some of the energy. So I can now walk into a place and say, oh yeah, I really feel it in this place. This place has a feel to it. As opposed to before when I would walk into a place and, you know, not be able to tell one way or another. Now I've developed a little bit of a sixth sense to be able to tell. And I think part of that is by doing so many investigations, but part of it is also by spending time with her and having her kind of open me up to that more. So I think, you know, it was called the Holzer method. Hans Holzer is the one that developed the method of bringing a psychic along on an investigation, even though Harry Price did it before him. But, you know, we'll give Hans Holzer the credit for that. And that's something that to this day is still beneficial. I'm not saying that you go 100% by everything a psychic says, and you certainly can't trust every single psychic. But if you have a good one that you can bring along and one that you can trust, and then you can get their impressions as well as what you're getting from the equipment that you're using, now you've just added another depth to that investigation.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Before we wrap up here, I'm just going to give a quick shout out here to who was in chat because we're getting wound down on time
our
here.
Hour.
Yep. Before the next show comes on. But we had Jen B in tonight. We had Matt. Shay was in. Myself. Kim. Thank you for joining us in chat today. Or I should say tonight. I don't even know if it's day, night, whatever it is. I'm just ready for the weekend. So thank you, everybody who was in chat tonight. Thank you for everybody who was not in chat but listening to our show. I want to thank our guest tonight, Tim Weisberg. It was an awesome show. I learned a lot. I actually learned a lot, especially about hacking things. So maybe I'll have to dabble in hacking that camera, that camcorder, instead of, you know. I still have my old camcorder, though, you know, the ones that use the little VHS tapes. That's night vision.
It works great.
It works great. It's just
the tapes are expensive. But
yeah.
Well, you never know where to look. You know, you might walk into a yard sale and somebody's got a whole package of those tapes for $3, and now you're set for your next 10 investigations.
Yep. That's right.
The only thing is it only lasts 2 hours, but then you have to switch out battery. But other than that, it works great.
Yep.
You know what I actually started doing because they're so cheap? Instead of buying other batteries, I just bought more cameras.
Yeah.
So I literally have 4 of those Sony handheld cameras with the night vision now because I pick them up for $5 at a flea market, you know? So now instead of having to go out and buy extra batteries and swap them out, I'm like, all right, this camera's dead. Give me the next camera.
Yep.
All right.
That is true.
All right. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Tim. Next week, we actually have Jeff Belanger on next week. So that'll be another interesting show. So stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to REP Paranormal and Friends. Be sure to check out Kim and Allison on Facebook at REP Paranormal Busters.